I don't care what lane anybody picks. Like I used to be so vehemently against fad diets. Or if you want to try a fad diet and you lose 40 pounds in 7 weeks, great. Just understand that there's a risk. Understand that you probably will gain some of the weight back. Understand that it's not going to teach you how to eat better. I absolutely recognize that women in perimenopause and menopause are fighting a harder fight, but that doesn't disqualify you from being capable of losing weight. It's just going to make it that much harder. And you have to pay more attention to the shit that you didn't have to pay attention to 20 years ago.
This is Mastering Menopause. By using fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, and mindset, you can master your hormones and get your body back. I'm Kathy Cote with Catalyst Fitness and Nutrition. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Mastering Menopause. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Aram Grigorian. And it's been a while. It's been a couple of years since I've had you on this podcast. And when I had first started out, I remember following you on your content. I've been following you for a while. So if you're not following 4 Weeks to the Beach on Instagram, please go follow him there on Instagram. And your posts are just like so to the point, so direct. And I'm like, I love this. And so I didn't realize, and you're probably going to hate this, I didn't realize what a big deal you were. I was just like, I love this guy. I got to get him on my podcast. I reached out to you. So
I'm not a big deal. I'm not. I'm a big deal to my mom. Maybe I think my dad's starting to like me, but let's suspend one thing immediately. In my opinion, I think follower count means absolutely nothing. People get famous by accident constantly. Now, I think I've put forth a lot of helpful information over the years that has helped a lot of people. And I think I've built up a bank of good grace, which is what Andrew Coates refers it to as. But I think to judge somebody's efficacy or integrity by the fact that they have 40,000 or 100,000 or 1 million followers is unfair to the people that haven't had that level of eyeballs on them yet, because there's a lot of really good professionals in this industry that people don't know about. And that was one of the purposes of the Real Coaches Summit, was to put really good coaches on stage who aren't at that celebrity status, like the Layne Nortons or the Jordan Syeds or those types of folks on stage. Because to me, those people tend to be disconnected from the everyday human being that's struggling the way that we see them. Right? They're a couple of layers removed. Yes, they probably still coach, but now they've grown to this capacity to where they don't really understand anymore. They still probably do, but they're not as connected to the ground floor the way that you and I are, because we're still in the trenches. We're doing the work. We're having to deal with these people's problems and their issues and their emotions the way that that coaches should. So thank you. And then the other counterpoint to that is I never want to invalidate somebody's excitement of meeting me, because I have had this idea of, well, I'm not that special, but maybe I am special to you. Maybe I am special to somebody in your audience who, if they met me, they'd be like, oh my God, it's 4 Weeks to the Beach. And I don't want to ever invalidate that, because I think that's cool too. And don't get me wrong, it's just part of me being humble and not liking limelight. But I want to put that out there to your audience, because if they ever look for credibility and integrity of information, it's not always going to be dependent on how many followers they have.
Correct. It's like the abs. Abs. Okay, so you that doesn't make you a great coach. Oh, yeah, no, I get that point. But yeah, the Real Coaches Summit has been awesome. I love that you brought that assembly of people together just for that point, and it just highlights like the work that we actually have to do. Trends will come and trends will go, but watching the trends come and go, and as we go shift through keto and holistic health right now is fading. I would say the validity of that, people putting so much into that. But what are you seeing as far as trends, and why do we just continue to ignore the things that work?
I mean, the simple answer is that the basics are just very boring, and we live in a society that's very tempted by the shiny object syndrome. So it's not hard to imagine that the human brain likes to be stimulated. We have the two pathways that our brain likes to follow is steering us away from pain and steering us towards pleasure, or some deviation of one of those two tasks. So if you're high anxiety, high stress, a lot of overwhelm, you want to counterbalance that with some level of dopamine and some level of enjoyment. So what happens? You eat something. You smoke something, you drink something, you have sex with something. Like there's always something that can replace feeling emotions with by being able to numb the emotions with that action. When it comes to trends in our industry, because there's so many of them, it just capitalizes on what the narrative is talking about. So right now it's all this idea of like seed oils are bad and gluten is bad and things are toxic. I find that to be very disconcerting to me, because the fact that somebody would put something onto a shelf for you to buy and eat and then it's actually toxic, think twice about that. Use your logical brain as a human being who's got a thinking and working brain. When you see a message of somebody, one of these cracks on Instagram telling you that if you eat Pop-Tarts, they're toxic. Like, how many Pop-Tarts would you have? You would die of diabetes before you would die of the toxicity level of whatever chemical they're citing as to be the bad thing.
I'm an 80s kid. If those were toxic, I'd be.
Alcohol is actually a documented, researched, understood toxin. Yet we have no problem during COVID keeping all the liquor stores open. We have no problem with the abundance of booze consumption in our country. We laugh about it in movies. We celebrate it in modern media. But that's actually toxic. Like, your body has no mechanism of storing it, so it has to get rid of it because it might kill you at a certain critical point. So with things like aspartame or seed oils or gluten or dairy or red meat or eggs or like all these other foods that people are starting to find reasons to demonize, all it is an effort to put eyeballs on them versus you or me. And then it's followed up by creating a problem that doesn't exist and then manufacturing a solution to that problem that you're going to then pay them for. So for anybody who's listening, who's susceptible to these types of messages, just understand that is the thinking and the logic behind most of these think tanks that are saying these things. Any reasonable coach would not put out that type of advice because there are no absolutes in the health field whatsoever.
Right. Yeah. What the hell? I think that started all of this. the fear mongering for sure.
But like, why would you ever in your right mind take something like a Netflix documentary and think that it was 100% true with absolutely no questioning of it, with no idea of who funded it and what their intentions were and what their biases are? All you got to do is do a very quick Google search on something like the Game Changers documentary, and you realize very quickly that James Cameron funded that at the same time that he was also heavily invested in a plant protein company in Canada. So you start to understand and put these pieces together. And it's not because we're trying to be conspiracy theorists or we're trying to go against the grain. The basis of science is questioning science. That's what science is. I have a hypothesis and I'm going to test that hypothesis. And I hope to be wrong 100 times before I'm right, because that leads me to the answer. It's almost like the same concept of charging somebody for murder and saying that person murdered somebody, and the evidence presented is without a reasonable doubt. So when we provide context and we provide science, it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So if there's any reasonable doubt introduced, it's no longer the only way to do something. And that's why when it comes to body fat reduction or muscle gain or body composition improvement or health improvement, whatever, there's so many different ways to do it. And most of the time, those ways are going to be much more deeply rooted into the psychology of the individual than the physiology of the individual.
Right. Yeah. How do we go from like meat is bad to you should be eating this processed beyond meat is beyond meat? But so what do you focus on with what does your client like experience look like? Or I should say.
I'm very much focused on expectations and understanding of what is being delivered by both parties directly from the beginning. I'll give you a great example. I signed a person yesterday who has been following me on Instagram for probably a couple of years. A woman in her 60s, very susceptible to all the messaging, listens to Huberman's podcast and Atiya's podcast and all these large volume think tanks that are being listened to, that are being thought of as authority figures in our space.
So she knows a lot.
She knows too much.
Yeah.
She knows, and I'm going to put knows in quotations, but she knows or thinks that she knows too much. But she doesn't practice anything consistently, right? She's never actually followed, like she's gone gluten-free, but she's stopped after a couple of weeks. She tries this, she tries that. And this is where most of our clients are coming to us from, is they're coming to us from this place of I've tried it all. Trying it all essentially means that you've actually done nothing. If you've tried something, like how long did you actually allow it to formulate before you decided that it didn't work or it did work? And my general recommendation for anybody is if you're going to do something from a nutritional standpoint, give it an honest and complete, accurate 30 days of doing the thing regularly, consistently, and monitoring what's happening during that period to then assess whether or not it worked or not. Because a couple of days or a couple of weeks isn't a good enough time frame for you to assess whether something is effective. And if it's a training modality change, shit, 6, 8, 10 weeks before we realize whether it's working or not. So people are just way too hasty. And again, that comes back to the instant gratification and the dopamine and the need for our feelings and wanting to feel pleasure versus pain. But I tell people exactly what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you a training plan, and I'm going to expect you to send me videos, form check reviews. I'm going to give you a nutritional plan. I'm going to expect you to be between 90 and 110% compliant to it. So you have a 20% spread. This is what you're going to be checking in once every 2 weeks or once a week. This is when you're going to get prompted with an email. This is what you're responsible for. I have an open door policy with all my clients. Everybody has my phone number. You can access me whenever and however often you want. Is that clear? Yes. What are your expectations of me during this process? I want you to help me lose fat. No, bullshit. What are your expectations of me as a coach during this process? I know what you want for a desired outcome. I don't care about that. That's the easy part. What is your expectation of me? You're paying me X amount of money per month. What do you expect from me? And that's what a lot of coaches don't do. And that's what a lot of clients don't understand about coaching. They buy a product, forgetting that it's not a product, that it's a service. I'm not here to fix your problems. You have to fix your problems. I'm here to shine a guiding light on the issues that you may be having, the limitations that are standing in front of you. And most of the time, 99 out of 100 times, it's a consistency problem. It's a psychological issue with the relationship with food or poor body image or unrealistic expectations. And sometimes it's just a lack of application, because somebody like my client who just signed with me yesterday, she's been listening to so much stuff that she's just been jumping from one thing to the next thing without ever giving it a shot, because she thinks that all these new things that keep coming out are the thing that's going to save her. Yeah. When in reality, her number one problem is a lack of consistency. So I don't care what lane she picked. And I don't care what lane anybody picks. I just posted about it today. Like, I used to be so vehemently against fad diets. I don't give a fuck anymore. If you want to try a fad diet and you lose 40 pounds in 7 weeks, great. Just understand that there's a risk. Understand that you probably will gain some of the weight back. Understand that it's not going to teach you how to eat better. Understand that there are consequences to that quick fix. But if you have a reasonable relationship with that quick fix, if you know how to deploy that without emotion, if you know how to deploy that diet context, and you understand how to exit out of it gracefully, and you know that it's not forever, who am I to stand in the way of that? I don't care. I'm not here to father you or slap you across the bottom when you fucked up. That's not my responsibility. You're an adult. And I have kids that I work with who are 15, 16 years old, and I treat them like adults. So I just want to empower people to make decisions that are in alignment with their values. But we have to also understand, what the fuck are your values? Yeah. What are you prepared to do on the worst possible day of your life? Are you just going to completely suspend all of your good habits? And there's going to be times in your life where shit's hitting the fan. Your kids are sick. Your husband's in the hospital. Your work is super demanding. You have no time for yourself whatsoever. So do we just stop eating well and just say, fuck it? Do we just stop working out at all? No, let's establish some bare ass minimum standards for ourselves. Let's have some values that are very distinctly understood and written out, and so that person is clear on who it is they are and what they're willing to do. And now we have a really good foundation to start from.
I love it. What do you think makes you a good coach?
Experience, empathy, and truth. I've been doing this for a very long time, so I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of different people. So I have a very good understanding of human psychology and behavior without actually having a formal education in it. I'm very self-aware myself, so I understand how to break things down into a very honest yet productive way. And then I listen and I understand. Like, I think it's one thing to listen, it's something to actually understand what somebody's going through and why they're going through it. So I'm very inquisitive. I like to ask a ton of questions. I forgot what my mom is Jewish, and she calls that methodology something. I think she calls it like Jewish gymnastics or something like that. When you just keep answering somebody's questions with more questions. And that's just what I do. I'm not going to allow you to not think. Like, I'm not ever going to be the person that's going to give you the answer. That's too easy. That's not why you hired me. If you wanted to hire a fat loss coach or a fucking macro calculator, there's plenty of those getting graduates, Greg, that are passing these weekend certifications every week. I'm going to challenge you to get the hell out of your own way. Like, you are probably the reason why you're not feeling good and not looking the way you want. So we're going to have to figure out why the hell that is. Why has this not stuck for you? What's been the barrier? So I think the marks of a good coach are having empathy, but also being able to be firm and having conviction. I think a good coach is a good communicator. I think a good coach is a good listener. And I think a good coach is open to being wrong and being fallible and being human, because that's who we're working with. So I think those are all the elements that I possess. And that's why I'm able to speak to my menopausal women the way that I do as a 40-year-old, heavily tattooed, pierced man that looks the way I do. I'll never understand what it's like to go through menopause, but I do understand what it's like to have hormone fluctuation and be fucked up because of it, because I went through andropause and I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be busy. I know what it's like to be depressed. I know what it's like to not like what you in the mirror. I know what it's like to not feel good in your own body and your own skin and your own mind. But you don't have to be like, I think people are always, well, you don't have a uterus, so how do you know? I don't have, like, your gynecologist doesn't either.
Right.
He has no problem diagnosing you with PCOS because he has a medical degree and he has 15 years of experience of working with women. So he doesn't need the uterus. That's not a prerequisite to be a good professional. So I think that just because I'm a man in the field of women's health, I don't think that disqualifies me for what I do. If anything, it actually gives me a very unique lens, and it allows a woman to feel like I'm being very objective about her condition. So I'm not judging her. I'm just trying to give her the best possible practices for her to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, there's always going to be challenges that come up, and really just bringing it to the basics. And there isn't a one way fits all for everybody. You cannot pigeonhole everybody into this is just what we do. This might work for somebody and this might work for somebody else. I'm just curious, like what inspired you to create the summit, the Real Coaches Summit? Because I highly value that, and having that experience, having gone to this past year, I've talked to my listeners about that. What inspired you to take this on and create this like environment where coaches can come together?
First of all, if you're an online coach, you're usually just working from home and you're by yourself. Obviously, if you have a family, then you have a family. If you have dogs, but you're typically at home alone, and you're not going into an office. You're not interacting with other human beings. You're typically very isolated. And a lot of people don't understand what it is that we do. Your general person, what do you do for work? I'm a nutrition coach. What the fuck does that mean? So there's always a sense of I'm on this island and nobody understands, and I have to deal with all these different personalities. So it can get very lonely. It can get very stressful, anxious. I wanted to create a community of like-minded individuals who are all in it for the same reasons, with integrity, trying to better their clientele base, but also develop their own self. And I wanted to create a room full of those people. So that was number one. Number two, I think there's way too many salesmen and there's not too many coaches anymore. I think a lot of people are selling coaching, but a lot of people are actually coaching. They're just not helping their people. They're selling them and they're bringing them into their ecosystem. And then because they're trying to make as much money and scale as fast as possible, they're creating these mills and these kind of like puppy mills of coaches where there's just so many assistant coaches and people are getting passed off from one person to the next. And there's just the personal touch and the personal relationship is being lost. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to put the education all sort into one room, to where if you were missing certain tactical pieces of information, I don't know how to deal with women in menopause, so let me go learn from somebody who does. I don't know how to implement cardio into a training program, so let me learn from somebody who does. I don't understand how energy systems pertain to calorie consumption, so let me learn from somebody who does. So a lot of coaches today, they get a couple of certifications, or one maybe. They maybe do a couple master classes here and there, but then that's it. There's no more further education. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a very open forum of, hey, if you are missing these pieces, here's where you can gather these pieces. And now you can start to build more confidence in your own coaching practice. And then lastly, I've just been to so many of these events that have sucked that I'm like, what are they missing? Well, typically they're missing a sense of community. They're missing a sense of convenience, because a lot of times if you go to these conferences, you have to eat on your own. You have to travel place to place on your own. the hotel and the venue and all this is all on different sites. So I wanted to create an experience that was very all-inclusive, that kept people in the same spot, that included food, included entertainment, because I wanted it to be a party, because a lot of times these things are very stuffy. And there's a lot of velvet red ropes around a lot of these events where there's, if you don't pay the VIP ticket, you don't get to meet the speakers. Or if you don't pay the VIP ticket, you don't get to go to the happy hour. So I'm like, fuck that. That's stupid. That's literally that's the anti version of what I'm trying to go to. Like, I paid you $600 to come here, and now you're telling me the same bullshit that you told me the last year because you didn't even want to revamp presentation. And you're just some celebrity coach who doesn't even work with people anymore. So you're not going to give me any value. And then I have to pay an extra $500 to sit in the same room as you to hear the same content that you're spewing off on Instagram. So I just didn't find a value in these different events that I was going to. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a few events that I think do a good job. Super Coach does a good job. Raise the Bar does a great job. Ali Gilbert Silverback Summit does a great job. Ken Kanak in Swiss, I think, is doing a pretty good job. But there's a lot of concerts that you go to where you feel like you spent money and got nothing out of it. And I never want that to be mine.
Yeah, it's motivational to go to some of these sometimes, but that's so fleeting. There wasn't real actionable education, like you said, right? Because I watch all those presentations that you talked about, and keeping the pulse on what's happening in the coaching world as well, being exposed to those different ideas from people that are just like, that's their passion, like that one thing, right? It's like cardio. Like Joel Jameson was like intense with that. I appreciate what I think your vision is anyways, is bringing this together. I really appreciate that event and what you've put together. And it's just a great way to connect with people that are like-minded as well, and not just for the money right there to make the buck. They really want to make a difference on the coaching industry. So thank you for that, Aram.
Of course, it's gonna live on. Hopefully, many more years to come if I can keep doing it the right way and not lose my shirt every year. Hopefully, I know that I have to charge more. That's number one. Is I was just giving it away for the last couple of years, so now I have to really charge what it's worth. And if that means that the attendance falls a little bit, it will. But I don't think it will. I think after this past year, people really saw what they were getting. I think it was a lot of new attendees that didn't come the first year. There's a buzz about it now. Other people that are hosting events are seeing it and starting to having change their model to be more inclusive because they're realizing that people have options now. Yeah. So I stirred things up. It cost me $100,000, but it's money. I'll make it back.
So do people reach out to you now? Right? I want to speak next year.
As far as like being on stage, yeah, I've had some people, and I think that's interesting because I hand pick all my speakers. And I handpick them based off of either whether or not I find them valuable based on our relationship or the stuff that they put out. So it's interesting to see people come out of the woodwork who don't actually ever support me or don't do anything with me or collaborate with me. Or I've had people literally just DM me that don't even follow me. They're like, hey, can I speak next year? I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck you are. I don't know why you would think in any universe that I would have you up on stage if I don't even trust you or know you. It's the first year was all basically people that I respected for a very long time in the industry. The second year was people I thought, and every year it's going to be new people. So it's never going to be like you're not going to see the same face on stage every year. I don't want to do that. Yeah. And that's going to hurt the feelings of some of the people that speak, but I don't really care. This event is not about the speakers. This event is about the attendees. So it's funny when people clout chase. Like I've even been told, like, why don't you speak at your own event? I don't really have anything to talk about that you're not going to see on my Instagram page. Like, I could spend an hour speaking about the shit that you guys probably already know, but that's not going to be valuable to you. So outside of me just feeling self-important and putting myself on stage and creating all these content clips for myself to then go advertise on Instagram about stuff, it's just not what I'm doing. I'm creating an opportunity for other coaches who I think are very good at what they do to have a voice and to be recognized and to be thought of as authority figures because they deserve it. But it's every year, it's going to be another 14 people that you probably didn't know were doing a good job. And that's what I want it to be. So hopefully that will continue. And it's going to be tough because more and more people are going to find out about it and more people are going to want to speak. And I'm going to have to make some hard decisions and tell some people that are close to me that this is not their time yet. But anything else, like, you have to wait for your shot and you got to be in those seats before you get to be on stage.
Yeah. It was a great curation, I think, of speakers, because there were people I had never heard of, and that's having that exposure for sure to people that you don't necessarily follow. How come I wasn't following like all these people? I just hadn't heard. There's just so much noise in the space. Like the big names, they get the attention. Like you said at the beginning, like recognizing people that are doing a great job that don't necessarily have a huge following, but are just really killing it and changing, again, the industry and making it better for everybody, making it more digestible and understandable. I think you do such a great job with your marketing. I wouldn't say marketing, with your content, keeping it real and just staying true to what your beliefs are. And I think we need more of that for sure.
There's too much bullshit. And I think the further we get down the road, I think there's no barrier to entry anymore. So it's not hard to become a coach. Anybody with a decent physique can throw content up on Instagram and start charging people to work with them. But that tip isn't coaching. Coaching is a relationship. Coaching is a team. Like when I sign up, or when people inquire on my website about working with me, I schedule a call with them and I say, are you available to chat about whether we're going to be a good fit? Because not everybody's for me and I'm not for everybody. And I'm not just gonna, even if I'm not having a great month or my money's starting to dwindle or business is not good, I'm not just gonna take on a bunch of people that I know aren't gonna do the work, because I expect people to show up. Like I expect people to participate. This isn't just like ordering food or having somebody come over your house and mow your lawn for you. You have to be participating in this process. And I think a lot of coaches are afraid to talk about the hard side of this stuff, because it's not easy. Like this shit is not easy. It's not easy to prepare most of your food and eat it. It's not easy to go to the gym when you don't feel like going to the gym. It's not easy to keep shit out of the pantry so that at 9 o'clock at night when you're bored and tired, you're not just eating all this garbage. So people don't want to talk about that. They want to give you the fastest result. They want to give you the easiest path. And there is no easy path. There is no hack. There is no trick. There is no pill. Well, there are pills now.
You have to shop at some pills.
But even with the pills, even with GLP-1 drugs and weight loss drugs, like there still has to be an effort made to eat protein, and there still has to be an effort to strength train and sleep well and work on your circadian health and work on your mental health, and then have a plan for what happens when the Ozempic is done. So I'm not opposed to any methodology that you want to choose, as long as you're fully empowered and educated to do it the right way.
Yeah. Said, yeah, there's a lot, I think, and you probably see it too with the menopause circle, like the hormones, and it's your hormones or it's your estrogen dominance, insulin sensitivity, and all this. I had a coach call me out. She's like, all you do is talk about protein and weightlifting. And I'm like,
that's all there is to talk about. But that's the shit that works. Listen, like I'm not a 50-year-old woman who's going through this. So I'm not looking at it through the eyes of you. I'm looking at it through the eyes of what I know about this time of your life chemically. And yes, it will be harder. So I absolutely recognize that women in perimenopause and menopause are fighting a harder fight. But that doesn't disqualify you from being capable of losing weight. It's just going to make it that much harder. And you have to pay more attention to the shit that you didn't have to pay attention to 20 years ago. And the stuff that you're doing now, you may not be able to do in midlife. Like if you're somebody who likes to drink wine, you may have to not drink anymore, because that's not doing you any favors. If you're somebody who likes to do a lot of cardio, you may have to switch to lifting weights, because the cardio is not doing you any favors anymore. It's not saying don't do any cardio. It's just saying you have to do more weights than cardio. If you're somebody who typically like to eat out 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, you may not be able to do that because your calorie threshold might not be that high. So if you're not willing to make adjustments to your lifestyle because of this new phase of life, then you can't blame your hormones and you can't blame your age. You have to just look in the mirror and say, I just was unwilling to make these changes, so I get to not expect any results. That's the reality of the situation. You have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, it is lifestyle, right? That's my philosophy is, it's not your hormones, right? Yes, we are dealing with a hormonal change, but it's your lifestyle that's influencing what's going on with your metabolism and your hormones. And you absolutely have control of that. You can't keep doing the same shit that you've been doing.
I got diagnosed with hypogonadism at 30 years old. And that means that I essentially went through menopause as a man at 30. My hormones declined. My testosterone dropped to below the reference range. I didn't have an erection for over a year. I couldn't function as a man. I was depressed. I couldn't build muscle. I couldn't burn fat no matter what I did. And I was discarded by the medical system. So I absolutely understand how gaslighting it is to walk into your OBGYN's office with problems and them saying that you're fine, you're within the reference range, whatever.
Yeah.
And women should be advocates for their own self-care because the medical system doesn't give a shit about you. They as long as you can breed healthy, right? Like as long as you can produce a child, they're good, you're fine. As long as you're not dying of any immediate condition medically, you're fine. But that's not optimal. That's not how you want to live. So you have to be able to speak up and you have to seek more than one opinion. And you have to understand that most of it, I don't care if you do get prescribed HRT, I don't care if you do get prescribed thyroid medication, you still have to do your part. You can't just completely go back to going to old habits. You can't just suspend eating well. You can't just suspend sleeping well. You can't just suspend not hydrating yourself or sitting on your ass all day or not training hard in the gym. These things still have to be staples in your life. And you also, the biggest factor of all of this is you have to now manage expectations and reality. As a 50-year-old woman, you're going to have to pull out a lot of stops to get to that 25-year-old body you used to have. And I don't think you're willing to do the level of work and have the level of sacrifice exhibited to do all the stuff to get to that point. Now, of course, there's plenty of women who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s that are doing bodybuilding shows and they're looking fucking crazy good in bikinis, and it's insane. Some of them have genetics on their side that you don't have. Some of them have a history of good behavior that you don't have. Some of them have all the time in the world to dedicate to this pursuit that you don't have. So you can't just look at some of these pictures that you see on Instagram and be like, she's 55 and she looks great. You know nothing about what she did from 20 to 55. And she probably doesn't talk about it all that often. So unless you actually pick her brain and ask her, what was your lifestyle like? How consistent were you? Were you somebody who ate out a lot or cooked most of your meals? What would your parents look like? Were you active as a child growing up? Like all these factors that factor into it are just so often misunderstood and ignored just because they see the outcome. They see that it's that tip of the iceberg syndrome. They see what happens at the top. They don't see the underlying layers that created this body for 25 or 30 years of consistency and compliance. They just want to say that, oh, she must be lucky. No, she's not. She's paid attention to this shit her whole fucking life. And you just started at 45 because you woke up and remembered that you were fat. That's what it comes down to. If you truly do, this is a tough moment that a lot of people don't like. You don't get to wake up at 45 and look down and be unhappy and start to blame the rest of the world for your problems. You don't. I'm a vain person. I'm very vain. I walk by every single reflection of myself and I look at myself constantly. I'm very vain. But I have a healthy relationship with vanity. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't keep me up at night. But I also didn't do anything to shoot myself in the foot the last 25 years. I'm 40. I look better than all my friends do because I've taken care of myself my whole life. I don't drink every day. I don't smoke every day. I don't eat like shit every day. I work out. I sleep well. I eat well. I do everything I need to do to take care of myself. So my friends who are 50, 70, 100 pounds overweight that I went to high school with all complain and bitch the same way that my menopausal women do. But they don't want to remember that for the last 20 years, they stopped caring. Or maybe they didn't stop caring, but they stopped acting.
Yeah.
They stopped showing up. You can't stop showing up. Participation is always going to be required.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I thank you so much for coming on. I think you just answered everything that I was going to ask you. What would you say are to just break it down, to distill it like I know that you can do, what are the biggest needle movers for your clients? Nutrition
and sleep. Those are like the overarching themes. Below that, the more tactical side of stuff is just have a goddamn schedule. Learn how to manage your time. And I say this with empathy because I understand, like, I don't have kids. If you're waking up every single day in a rush and your whole day is now rushed and now you have all this stress and overwhelm and anxiety, wake up an hour earlier. But to do that, you have to go to bed an hour earlier. None of these things are rocket science. You don't have to be a genius to come up with these solutions to these problems. But we have women that are snacking all day, not eating any real meals. We have women that are waking up right before their kids are up and they're rushing around trying to get their kids together and themselves together and their husband together and their jobs together. They're just they don't have enough time in the day. So if you don't have time, you have to make time. In order to have quality nutritional habits, you have to prepare yourself for success. You cannot leave it to chance. You cannot guesstimate. You have to actually have measurable, actionable processes in place. And I'm not saying you have to cook all your meals on Sunday and stick them into plastic containers and be a bodybuilder. But there's no reason why, if you can't make it to the grocery store, why you're not on your phone ordering Instacart and having the groceries dropped off at your house. There's no reason why, when you're traveling, that you're not looking at menus at restaurants or trying to find an Airbnb versus a hotel room so you have a kitchen. There's no reason why you can't use food delivery service apps and find the best possible poke bowl or rice bowl option where you have control of the assembly of the ingredients and get double protein on everything. So there's ways out of your problem. You just have to actually stop focusing on the problem and start focusing on the solution. So if you're saying I don't have time to meal prep, so it's not that you don't know how to meal prep or you don't know where to find the time. It's just you aren't good at managing your time. So start looking at your schedule a day or two ahead and say, okay, cool. If I have a full day of scheduling at work and then I have to drive 2 kids to these appointments and these practices and these games, the same way you would pack your children food for the day, you have to pack yourself food too. So like everything that I talk about with my clients falls under the category of no shit. Everybody's just, yeah, no shit. That's how you should be. You're an adult. You have to be responsible and use your time wisely. You don't have a lot of it. None of us do. I have the privilege of having more time than most, but I'm moving this weekend. I've had to sign up for new electric bill. I had to switch over my cable and do this. And I had to be on the phone for 3 or 4 hours. Guess what? While I'm doing that, I'm prepping all my food for the next couple of days because I can be on my phone on speaker while I'm in my kitchen browning beef and putting stuff into a crock pot and putting stuff into the oven. So start to learn how to multitask. If you're doing a load of laundry, it's not like you're sitting there with a fucking stone with a washboard by the river creek. You're putting it into a machine, closing the door, turning it on, and then you can just walk away and get on with your day. So I think people are just overcomplicating, overthinking, and underdoing, and that's what I try to empower all people to be able to reverse that, is just think less, do more.
Love it. Love it. I'm envisioning you putting stuff into a crock pot. I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble envisioning that.
Instapot. I use the Instapot for chicken. Okay. For chicken. But that's the only way I'll eat chicken is if I put it into an Instapot and it's shredded. Otherwise, I fucking hate chicken.
You can take the hand mixer, and then after it's cooked, you can just take a hand mixer and you get shredded chicken.
I don't have a hand mixer, but I'm going to get one now. Thank you.
You can literally, it's like Sun Game, $12.99, right? Maybe they're $19.99 now, but it's dope.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like shit like that, right? Like I would have not thought of that unless you brought that up. So that's the type of stuff, like I think coaches, the proof of concept is there. We just start collecting all this data from all these, because I have a Facebook group for only my clients, and the amount of stuff that gets shared in there that's so helpful is amazing to me. It's like, oh, I never thought of doing that. I never thought of doing that. Like sometimes as coaches, we're reminders, but most of the time, all we're doing is just illuminating opportunities. And that's the beautiful part about this process is like, you may have a method that works really well that I've never even thought of. And that doesn't disqualify me from being a good coach, and it doesn't make you the best coach in the world. It just means that your method worked because you've tried it and other people have tried it and it's worked for them. So that's why I think being together in this industry, as opposed to like talking shit about everybody all the time, like there's this new trend now where everybody's debunking information and this person said that, so let's shit on them.
Yeah, I hate that.
I don't have enough time. If I had 18 hours a day to just scroll through Instagram and find the stupid shit that I would want to comment on, it would take up so much of my brain capacity. I wouldn't be able to do my job or be present for my family. So what I have to do is I have to just stay in my lane, produce productive and helpful information, and learn from other people who are doing the same, and then us join forces so we can start to be louder than the bullshit. Because if we can come together as an industry, as opposed to doing all this infighting and I'm wrong and you're right and I'm wrong or whatever, I'm just tired of it. It's so exhausting.
There's no award for somebody, I'm the rightest.
And nobody cares. Like the amount of like comments that get sprayed. Like a friend of mine's a physical therapist, and she had posted something about back injuries or bracing and breathing. And then this one guy just kept coming at her. So finally I chimed in and I sent him a DM because that's what I do. And I sent him a DM and I said, dude, you're a physical therapist. You're a high level educated person. You're spending your time just sitting there and tearing this individual down. If you had a problem with her, just shoot her a message and be like, hey, I saw your post. I didn't agree with it. Here's why. Maybe we should have a conversation about it. Maybe we can learn from one another. Isn't that much more productive? Because the only reason why you keep commenting on each other or you keep shitting on each other is to make yourself sound smarter than that other person. So if you have to step on other people's shoulders to make it in life, that's not doing it with integrity. And at some point, people will see that. And for me, I'd rather be able to put my head down on a pillow at night knowing I did it the right way.
Yeah. That's funny. I had a very well respected woman in the industry, menopause, who chimed in on one of my posts, and I was surprised. I was like, what? Like, and she's, this is completely wrong, and this is this and that. And I'm like,
What was the post and what was wrong about it?
It was like, how is this wrong? I said, I don't think that intermittent fasting is the best thing for women that are going through menopause because of the stress. And she was like, went ballistic. This is the way.
I don't disagree with you.
This is
the way that way may work for her clientele base if they're willing to do it and if they're properly being coached through it, but that is not the way. It's a way.
Yeah. It was
send me the post, because I like to go at people.
It was so long ago from TikTok, so long ago. Like, I was very, very surprised that it would take the time.
I'm not. You saw what went on at my conference after the woman spoke about menopause and I had to fucking deal with it afterwards. People like to be right. That's what Instagram is all about. Like, most people are not.
You can't be right. Because there's so many. That's the thing. You can't be right because there are so many angles, especially when we're dealing with menopause.
Yep.
There's no right. Mostly, but that's not going to apply to everybody. Just like I would never say like, no one should do intermittent fasting. And I've always said that unless you have or going through a gut health protocol or obese, it's probably not the best thing for you.
Yeah. Like I started fasting once a week 2 weeks ago. So I'm on my third week this week. I'm doing it purely experimentally. I've never fasted before. I had no idea how it felt. I've never done like a dinner to dinner fast. I've done it hungover 1,000 times. But I've never done it with intention. And I told all my clients that I was going to do it. And I prefaced everything by saying, I'm not doing this for fat loss.
And how much more does your life suck? No, I'm just kidding.
Honestly, it hasn't been bad. I drink 3 cups of bone broth a day to get a little bit of protein in, a cup of coffee. I drink probably 5 or 6 of my big containers of water. So like I'm peeing like clear by 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And I don't really start getting hungry until about 3 or 4 o'clock. And that's usually, and this is another important point for people that are listening, I start getting hungry when I start having less to do. Under no shit moment, right? Like you're fucking busy all day long. Like how many women work through 3 or 4 meals a day, right? They get up at 7 and they're just going until 3 and they realize they just haven't eaten anything.
I forgot to eat. I'm like,
until they forgot to eat, until they're sitting on their ass on the couch. The kids are asleep and now they're fucking slamming everything they can down their throat because they're tired, they're stressed, they're hungry, they haven't eaten, and the availability of food is in front of them. And they have nothing else to think about but how bored and how hungry they are. So are you actually bored? Are you actually having cravings? What fasting has done for me, this one day of fasting a week, it's made me very in tune with where my hunger is coming from. And my hunger is coming from purely from the fact that I have nothing else to do but to think about being hungry. Yeah. So if I was busy all the way up until 7 o'clock at night when I was supposed to break my fast, I wouldn't be hungry all day. So it's just more perspective for people to think about.
Yeah, I love it. So where do you have anything any program or anything? Do you just do straight one-on-one coaching? I know you posted about that.
Yeah, if people have questions, if they want to pick my brain about anything, they feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm always answer my DM. If you're a coach who's listening to this for whatever reason, get your butt to the Real Coaches Summit. It's realcoachessummit.com is where you can drop your email to get on the list for next year. And then 4 weeks to the beach, the number 4, the number 2 is where I hang out on Instagram. But yeah, I don't sell anything. Half the time, if you find me and you want to be coached by me, great. If not, I'll help you for free. I spoke to a woman for an hour on the phone today that didn't pay me a dime, so I'll do that all the time. There's enough people selling shit, and you've bought enough in your lifetime, and you have to be ready for coaching. So if you're not ready, I'm not going to sell you anything.
I will link all of those into the show notes. And yeah, if you're thinking about going to the Real Coaches Summit or wanted some information on that, I will definitely get yourself on the wait list. It was a very good experience, and it's in Las Vegas, so why not?
I'm hoping to keep it there. I have a call today at 2:30 with an event planner, and I'll see if she can help me find venues that will drop the costs of stuff, because I like the Virgin and they've
done a suggestion. I will talk after.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Aram, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you allowing me to share my perspective with your audience.